Alrighty, welcome back to another thrilling installment of Free Read Fridays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggeth, and today we start on our new quest, which is reading through HELLBURNER by C.J. Cherryh. I forgot a bookmark. There it is. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a long installment for this first one.
Oh my god, don't drop it. No.
Bit of a long one, about 50 pages. Um, for reference, most of my short, hour to hour and a half streams are like 30, 35 pages. 50 pages is going to take a while. I'm going to try and remember the voices I did from before. I unfortunately can't remember without actually re-listening, which I'm not going to do right this second, to uh, my last couple chapters because there's one or two characters here who are returning, as well as some who are relatively minor in the previous book. They appear right at the end, and then they become much more important here. They're far more relevant to the narrative at large. Blech. But most of the cast that you remember and knew and loved from the previous is going to come back at some point. Um, so I'm going to do my best to remember voices, and we'll go from there. Let's see what else. What else should I say here? Actually, how far after the events is this one? I don't actually know. It's not long. It's not immediate, but it's also like a matter of years. Let's see. Heavy Time was published when? It might actually be that close. Let's. I had this memorized and I forget things all the time, so my apologies. Uh, Bibliography. Boop. Heavy Time was 91 and HELLBURNER's 92. So one right after the other, basically written as uh, two parts of a whole. No, not Heavy Time. I want HELLBURNER. Give me HELLBURNER, please. How many years after is HELLBURNER? That's the description for Heavy Time, not for HELLBURNER. Suffice it to say, it's like within a fairly short period of time, like countable in very few years. If it's even years, it might be months. Whatever. So this book is going to get into some of the building background drama of the Earthers, the people who live around Earth, around the planet Earth, and the government, and just how they're kind of reacting to the fact that people have spread out and are living just fine on others around other stars. Some of the subtext for this is Earth has always thought of itself as the center of the universe, and it no longer is true. It is part of the universe, and it's a fairly important economic hub, but it wants to believe, and a lot of this is kind of brought up in Heavy Time. More of it will be brought up in Down Below Station if I ever get around to reading that aloud. I would count that out for now. It's a long book, and B, um, a lot of the book, not much is happening, and then things really, really do. I love Down Below Station, and it's extremely important to understand the universe, uh, this particular universe that these books are written in. But um, it's kind of hard going to read aloud. I'll probably do it at some point, but don't hold your breath just yet. Um, I will get around to it. I just said I wasn't going to promise it, and I literally just did. So You heard it here first. Not this year. Let's put it that way. Not this year. I have other stuff I want to get to this year. A bunch of other stuff. I want to do another book by Neil Stevenson, for instance. At any rate, so this is taking place maybe a year after. They do give an actual time period. I'm just reading the description here to see if there's no. They don't mention a year. Um, no, 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 no. At any rate, so some of the subtext. Back to my rant. Some of the subtext is Earth still doesn't want to believe that it's no longer the center of the human universe. Um, there isn't really a new center of the human universe, and that's important because, or at least is going to be important come Citeen, the novel, and particularly its sequel deals with um, kind of the ramifications of how the diaspora of humanity has worked so far, and how um, people are kind of factionalizing. Citeen itself being one of the big instigator, well, big factionalizers. I really want to get around to reading Citeen. That's another super tough book to read, but it's super worth it. Um, so Earth is kind of upset that people aren't paying as much fealty to Earth as Earth, the people who run the show at Earth, feel they should be. I'm mangling this. I'm absolutely mangling this, and I apologize. So Earth isn't thrilled. Earth has opinions on this. So Earth kind of wants them to get in line. And this book is about kind of the lead up, if you were on the front lines, as it were, if you were like just a person on the ground, a person living your life, um, like a low level functionary, what that would look like. Is Earth girding its loins for something big? A big push, as it were. I've already spoiled the book at this point, but a lot of this is kind of in heavy time already and sort of is implied. That's where things are going, but this is going to make it pretty explicit what's going on, and then the end result of what Earth wants to do is going to come due in Down Below Station, which again I'll probably get to because it's kind of a logical follow-up, um, but not anytime soon. All right, I have yammered on for about 15 minutes, so let's get cracking. And again, if you like The Expanse, this will probably tickle some of the same itches. Tickle some of the same itches. What does that even mean? Will scratch some of the same itches as that. At least it does, in my opinion. I like The Expanse for a lot of the same reasons I like the C.J. Cherry Alliance universe, or Merchant or universe, whatever they call it now. At any rate, here we go. Hellburner by C.J. Cherry. One sec, I'm getting interrupted. All right, do over. Hellburner by C.J. Cherry. Chapter 1. Stockholm is a city of islands and gardens, a stunningly electric. Whoops. Stockholm is a city of islands and gardens, a stunningly eclectic architectural mix, from the Riksdagshuset to the 23rd century Karlberg Museum, from the restored Riddersholm Kirke to the Academy Gardens. Founded in the mid-13th century, the city of Stockholm holds abundant evidence of 1,000 years of Baltic seafaring tradition, plus a lively nightlife centered in modern Gustavsholm. Ben indexed through the motile pictures and the text, the statistics about rainfall and mean average temperature which the guide cautioned a visitor did not in any sense. The statistics about rainfall and mean average temperature, which the guide cautioned a visitor, did not in any sense mean a constant temperature. Useless statistic, unless one contemplated Antarctica, where a mean temperature of minus 57 degrees C and an average hours of sunlight only slightly better than Sol Station Core meant Ben Pollard had no interest in McMurdo Base. Ben Pollard had seen a good deal of cold and dark and rock in his life. Old rock. This 13th century business amazed him. The whole damn human race dated itself in 18ths of Jupiter's passes about the sun, to the astonishingly recent number of about 10K such fractions, if you took the oldest cities. Aztec's R2 out in the belt had been a scuzz old place, and a friend of his had sworn it had seen better days in his lifetime. But when Ben Pollard thought old, he thought in millions. The rock he'd handled out there was old. Humankind was a real junior on those terms. He sipped real orange juice, imported up from the blue, cloud-swirled globe you could see at any hour on Channel 55, along with the weather reports anywhere in the Motherwell. Weather was a novelty. Real weather. You got weather in a station core when they were blowing cold rock down the chute. You got condensation in your spacecraft, and you swore like hell and wiped and dried and tried to find the source of it. But in the Motherwell, condensation fell out of the sky in frozen balls, or slow flakes, or liquid drops, depending on the low-level atmospheric temperatures, and K-wide clouds threw out electrical discharges that made it a very bad notion to stand, the guide said, as the highest point in the landscape. Daunting thought. The guide said 70% of the Earth was water. The guide said water in the oceans was 10K meters deep in places, and because it wasn't frozen, Luna's gravity pulled it up in a hump of a wave that rolled around the globe and washed at every shore it met, enough to grind up rock into beaches. All that unfrozen water. Gaseous nitrogen and liquid water that made all that sparkle when the sun hit the wrinkles on it that the guide said were waves. He planned to stand on a beach and get a good close look at that unfrozen water, on a clear day when there were no lightnings. You could do it from the station. You could be there while you were here, but VR was a cheat. You could be a whole lot of places that weren't real. He wanted to stand at the edge of the ocean and watch the real sun disappear behind the real world, at which point he figured he would really believe he was standing on a negative curvature. The guide said some spacers got dizzy, with the horizon going the wrong direction. There were prescriptions for vertigo. There were preparatory programs. But hell, he'd monkeyed around the core at R2 and stared straight at the rotation interface. That had to be worse. The clock on the screen said 0843, June 14, 2324. And there was plenty of time this morning for coffee. Dress maybe by 0930 hours. Exams were done. The last score was going up today, but hell, that was interactive reality sampling, and he had that one in his pocket. No question, no sweat. Probably set the curve. Him or Meeker, one or the other. Just let the UDC get that score, and Stockholm was in his pocket for sure. Motherwell assignment in the safest, softest spot in the service except Orlando. Stockholm was where Ben Pollard was headed. Yeah, soon as the interviewers could get up to the station. Hell and away from the belt he was. Here you didn't jam two guys into a 15x6. Hell no. Sol Station and admin? You got a whole effing 15x6. 0.9G apartment by yourself. With a terminal that could be vid or VR or whenever you opted. If you qualified into the programming track in the UDC Technical Institute, you got an allotment that afforded you a 2 CD personals per effin' 7-day week, which meant OJ that was real, coffee that was real, red meat that was real, if you had the stomach for it, which Ben personally didn't. You lived like an effin' company exec and had a clearer conscience. And if you could get that on world posting, your Tech 2 graduation rating equaled a full UDC lieutenancy in the Motherwell, with an Army First Lieutenant's pay to start, full grade Technical 1 promotion guaranteed in a year, and access with a capital A to all the services that pay could buy. You knew there was a war out in the beyond, but it wasn't going to get to Earth, and that was what they were building that fleet out there to stop. And even if it did, nobody was going to hit the Motherwell. Humans just didn't do that. You were safe down there. You'd be safe no matter what. He'd got his graduation with honors. He was certain of it. He'd sweated his security verifications, but they'd come through months ago, and nobody had come up with an objection. He'd sailed through administrative service exams 4 weeks ago, and the only complication in his way now was the formal interview, as soon as the personnel reps from the various agencies could get seats on a shuttle up here. Funding time and some legislative hearing in admin had the shuttle up slots jammed with senators and brass and aides for the last 3 days. But that was thinning out, thank God. The agency interviewers might turn up by the end of the week, after which he could book himself a seat for Earth on whatever assignment shook out. Maybe even take his pick. Whiter had dropped him a conspiratorial word that he had 3 different computer divisions fighting over him, including strategic supply modeling and intelligence, and the prestigious AI lab in Geneva, which was for his personal ambitions a little too scientific and academic. Give him something with a direct line to politics. God, yes! There was money in that, and a protected paycheck. Money. A nice apartment down where you navigated a perceptually planar surface at a 300 kph crawl, when he was used to thinking in kps and nanosecond intersects. Life on Earth went so much slower, and death came so much later for a man who had money, brains, and position. He'd had a partner back in the belt, Maury Bird, who had used to talk to him about Colorado and cities and sunsets and Shakespeare. Bird had set a lot of personal store by Shakespeare. Bird had thought Shakespeare was important to understand. So when it had turned out, of all things, he was going to the inner system, he had made it a certain point to see this Shakespeare guy. Translated tapes, of course. V-vids, where you could wander around and watch the body language. And Bird had been 100% right. Shakespeare really helped you figure Earthers. Blue skiers. People who had never felt null G, never seen the stars all the way to forever. Different people, with numbers hard to figure. People who thought they had a natural right to orange juice and gravity. People who, the guide maintained, felt the moon tides in their blood. Getting the right numbers in a new situation absolutely mattered. On Earth, air was free, and ship routes and energy were what the old Earthers had fought bloody wars over. Sincerely skewed values. But you had to think about that 2D surface constantly, and it was limited that way. Finite. Finite resources. Shakespeare helped you see that. Helped you see how certain old Earthers in control of those resources had thought they could run your life, the same as company execs. and how these king types always talked about God and their rights, like the preachers on R2's Hell Deck, who snagged you with tracts and talked to you about free shares in their particular afterlife, and argued whether the aliens at Pell had souls. Only these old kings had been the preachers and the law and the bank. Long way to come from the belt, from company brat in a company school learning nothing but company numbers, to figuring Shakespeare and human history. But there it was, the motherlode of all living stuff and the home of humankind back when humans had been as backward as the downers at Pell. Earth was full of museums, full of artifacts, pots and tombs and old walls graffitied with stuff that was supposed to make you live forever. The guide said so. Most of all, it was the motherlode of information, data, old and new. And the right numbers and enough data on the data, whatever, data on the systems that ran the Earth Company and the United Defense Command could make him rich. Rich made a man safe and got him most everything Ben Pollard could put a name to. Visitors to Stockholm may be impressed with the Maritime Museum or the Zoological Garden in Haga Park. A planet that wasn't a radiation hell was a novelty. Earth with its completely outsized moon was a novelty. And life thriving at the bottom of a gravity well was a radically upside down way of thinking. Life that made good wine and food that wasn't synth. A surface where plants grew and cycled the O2 and the CO2 on sunlight and dark. The habitats where animals lived. Fascinating concept. Non human things walking around where they decided to walk and looking at you with unguessable thoughts going on behind their eyes. People searched the stars for life, and there was all this life on Earth that blue skiers took for granted, and ate if it didn't look too much like people. He wanted to see a zoo. He wanted to look at a cow or a dog and be looked back at, when he'd never expect to see any real thing more exotic than miners on R&R and bugs under a lab scope. Humans had existed such a scarily short time. With this war going on in the beyond, they seemed scarily fragile. He wished he could talk to Bird about that. Bird had had a peculiar perspective about things. He wished he could really figure out what Bird had been, or recall half that Bird had said over the years. There was so much blue sky attitude he still couldn't get the straight of. Baroque was the word. Curves all over their thinking, like gold angels on the old buildings that didn't have a damn thing to do with useful. The message dot flashed on the corner of his screen. God, it could be the interview notice. His fingers were on the mod, and the 1 to accept mail, and the DV, and the 3 to print faster than he could think about the motion. It said, Tech 2, Benjamin J. Pollard, CTS/SS/UDC 28, BAT 2, 0852 June 14/24, SN P-235-9876/MLR. Report to FSO HQ, 0930 hours, Ref Simons. Fleet Strategic Operations? Fleet Ops? What in bloody hell? MRL, automatic log. No way to pretend he hadn't gotten the message. No way to query the CO. Whiter wouldn't tell him it was a report to. He didn't have the answer, and he'd effin' better answer it and find out what the fleet wanted with a UDC lad, hadn't he? It wasn't an interview. God, no. Fleet Strategic Operations didn't need a UDC programmer Tech 2 with a priority 10 for economic/and strategic supply modeling. Did they? Shit, no. The damn tight-fisted legislature insisted on trying to interface the UDC EIDAT. Do we know what that stands for yet? I don't think we do. With the fleet's Statentech system through the EC security screen. Then let me start the sentence over again. One sec. Paragraph, not sentence, but also sentence, but also paragraph. Shit, no. The damn tight-fisted legislature insisted on trying to interface the UDC EIDAT, EIDAT with the fleet's Statentech system through the EC security screen. That was what. The fleet Statentech system tried to phone the UDC's EIDAT 4005 to ask for available assignees, and the 4005, behind the EC's security cloak, spat up a UDC Priority 1 assignee for a fleet data entry post. But you couldn't ignore it. You didn't want to face the interviews with an inter-service screw-up or a disciplinary in your record. Damn the thing! No second cup of coffee. He drank the half he had left. He had left while his fingers tapped up the station map and asked it where in hell FSO HQ was on the trans system from his apartment in TI 12 for an 0930 appointment. 915, 2, green 214, blue 2, 5-99, pass required for entry. Hell had gone from TI, and it was already 9 o'clock. 10 effing minutes to shave, dress, and find his copy of the rating, which clearly said UDC Priority Technical 2, before the fleet grabbed him and stuck him at Mars Base doing data entry and supply. He burned the beard off, pulled on his dress blues. Never wear fatigues to an inter-service glitch-up. He had to talk to officers, no question, before this one was straightened out. Maybe all the way up the effing COC in the UDC and the fleet. And the fleet. It could be a long day. Envelope from UDC Technical at Geneva in the briefcase, where it belonged. He put it in his breast pocket. Never a friggin' situation without a last friggin' minute complication. God, he didn't know why things like this happened to him. His interview appointment could come through at any hour. He didn't want Meeker to grab the first slot. First effing thing he was going to do if they gave him Geneva was put the shove on that damned EC software. He checked his watch. 0908. 5 minutes to walk to the trans. Orders in his pocket. Yes. And out the door. Trans was packed. A whole wide-eyed batch of shiny new C1s with their entry tags and their hand baggage occupied all the seats, and Ben clung with an elbow about a pole and punched buttons on the hand reader, running down the applicable rules on inter-service transfer apps. Wasn't any reason to sweat it. Couldn't be. Whiter shoved him through 3 levels in a year. He was Whiter's fair-haired baby, best Whiter had ever had in the department. Him and Meeker, neck and neck all the way. No way Whiter wouldn't go up the chain for him. Green 14. He made the transfer and lost the C1s. Thank God. He got a seat, sat down, and read. Right of appeal. Ref. Administrative appeal. Section 14. Through chain of command in service of origin. In service of origin. Which meant the United Defense Command, which wasn't, never mind Fleet Captain Conrad Mazian's performance at the UN, going to let the fleet get its hands on whatever it wanted. Let's try that sentence again so it makes any sense at all and isn't word salad. Incidentally, hello, optical antenna. In service of origin, which meant the United Defense Command, which wasn't service of origin or wasn't, never mind. Which wasn't, never mind Fleet Captain Conrad Mazian's performance at the UN, going to let the fleet get its hands on whatever it wanted. Blue line now. Institution blue. The walls outside the specs and the doors grew scuzzier and scuzzier, and the air that sucked in when the doors opened was cold and smelled of oil. Descent into hell, Ben thought. Like R2 all over again. He sat in his dress uniform and watched the scenery, dark tunnel and grim flashes of gray-blue panels and white station numbers as the trans shot past stops without a call punched. Thump of the section seals. He could almost smell Helldeck, but all but hear the clash of metal and the hard, raucous beat of the music echoing down the deck. He smelled the peculiar taint of cold machinery and kept having this most damnable feeling of belonging in the dark side, living on the cheap, getting by, scamming the company cops, and knowing he could always slip through the system, knowing far more about the company computers and access numbers than the company thought he'd learned. Him and Bird, and Sal Abujib. Damn. Helldeck wasn't a place you'd miss. He was someone else now. Spiff uniform and a Tech 2's collar pin. Clean fingers, in all senses. He didn't do a thing illegitimate with the computers he worked with. He didn't know anybody who did. No, sir. Didn't even dream about that H word near the Defense Command computers. He'd got away with it. Was still getting away with it. He'd dumped. Mm, bleh. He'd dumped the card on R2, and it had never surfaced. He'd gotten his security clearance. He'd gotten his rank. Nobody was going to screw that up. Nobody could have found anything to screw him now. 5-99. The sign outside the doors said, Security Area. Restricted. Show pass. He got up and got out in a beige, plain hallway. Warmer here, thank God. It wasn't going to freeze his ass off or have him shaking when he was talking to the desk. He straightened his coat, clipped his fancy tech reader onto his belt, and walked up to the only door available, under a security array that was probably reading his respiration rate and taking notes. He put his card in the slot. The door clicked and opened. Fleet security occupied the solitary desk in the foyer. Beyond it was a potted silk palm, an abstract picture, and another beige windowless door. Pollard, the officer said, with no attention to the protocols in the rulebook. Or his face. Just the readout on his screen. Benjamin J., you're carrying electronics. Reader. The officer held out his hand. Ben surrendered it and watched the officer turn it on and punch buttons. Fancy. Break his effing neck getting here, and this cop type stalled him playing games with a piece of equipment a piece of expensive and delicate equipment. Wah! I'm sorry. Break his effing neck getting here, and this cop type stalled him playing games with a piece of expensive and delicate equipment. He said, I've got an appointment at 0930. The guard said, HQ, and motioned with the back of his hand. Lieutenant Jackson. Jackson, was it? Fleet lieutenant. Which, in the much argued and protested equivalencies, was a rank just under Major Whiter's, and one over his. Ben drew himself up with a breath, thinking, with part of his brain, son of a bitch deep spacer attitude, and minded for son of a bitch deep spacer attitude, and minded for half that breath to make an issue of inter-service protocols, but the rest of his brain was still wondering if the fleet could have any legitimate interest in him, and hoping all he had was a pocket full of EIDAT screwed orders. So he saluted, got a flip of the hand, and walked to the inner door, that clicked open on a long bar of a desk and a sober-faced clerk, who said, efficiency at least, Lieutenant Pollard? Yes. Manners. Finally. He took the offered escort to a side office. Jackson took the salute, offered him a seat. Young guy. Pleasant. Serious face. Better, he thought. Thank you, sir. Jackson folded his hands on the desk. Lieutenant Pollard, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. A friend of yours has been involved in an accident. Friend of mine? That was a complete mental shift. He honestly couldn't think if he had a friend. Not lately. Bird was dead. Sal? Name of Decker, Jackson said, and Ben all but said, Shit! before he remembered he wasn't in the belt and swallowed it. Fatal? Serious. He's asking for you. For me? He was vastly relieved it wasn't Sal, distressed if Deckard gotten into trouble. He didn't hate Decker. Not really. Decker had enlisted with him, gone off into some secret pilot training program. Real hot piece of equipment, Decker had said. Jackson said, his doctors feel it might be some help, a familiar face. He thought, oh, God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to see the guy again. I hate hospitals. I don't like blood. But there it was. The brass had made a humanitarian move. No way to explain all the old business between them. It could drag up too much he didn't want on record. If Decker had killed himself in some top-secret operation, he was sincerely sorry, and if he was all Decker could dredge up for a request, well, hell, the guy had saved his neck, sort of, back in the belt. And cost Bird's life, damn him, however indirectly. Sorry to drop this on you, Jackson said. Not a problem. Truth is, we weren't friends, but I guess I owe him to drop over there. I've got a travel voucher for you. Travel voucher. B-Doc. Aw, now, God, wait a minute. B-Doc wasn't on Sol 1. It was on an auxiliary station 3 and more days out, on Sol 2. Ben reached for his pocket right then. I can't do that. I'm sorry. This is a priority rating. There's an agency officer coming for an interview this week. I can't leave. Jackson laid an envelope on top of his. There's a B-Doc shuttle leaving at 12:05. That's your travel voucher and your leave. It's already signed and cleared. Sir, that's 6 days, even if I get a same-day turnaround. He gingerly eased his letter from underneath and laid it gingerly onto the side, in Jackson's view, where the United Defense Command logo showed. This is from HQ Geneva. It says I'm a military priority. This one's from Captain Q in this office, on a classified priority. You're going. Decker isn't a friend of mine. He's listed you as next of kin. We're not related. God, he's got a mother right here on the station. Astrid, Ingrid, something like that. Talk to her. He's in a classified program. Only certain people are approved for contact in a next of kin emergency. You're it. You're advised not to call anyone. You're not to talk to anyone. Your CO will be advised simply that you're on humanitarian leave. I'm UDC Essential Personnel. Show me an assignment. Shit. So you're going. What about my interview? That's not my information flow. I'll log it as a query. Look, this is important. If I miss this slot, I could wait 6 months. Jackson shrugged. We all have our hardships, Lieutenant. Look, this is a screw-up. It's an absolute screw-up. God, Decker and I don't even like each other. Cold as a rock. I don't have that information. Transport will pick up your baggage at your quarters. Just leave it. Report to the shuttle port by 11:45. It's near 10:30 right now. It's 20 minutes to quarters. I'd be on that shuttle, Lieutenant Pollard. When you get to B-Dock, report directly to Fleet Ops office on the dock. Give them this pass and they'll see you get straight to the hospital. Don't mistake that instruction. Listen, sir, you know what happened. Decker wrote me in as a joke, and he never thought they'd be using that information. It's a damn joke. If it is, I'm sure they'll straighten it out at the other end. I'd be moving, Lieutenant. Jackson stood up and handed him the 2 envelopes as he rose. Good luck. Yes, sir, Ben said, took his papers and his orders, saluted the son of a bitch, and left. Collected his reader from the front desk, and made a fast, desperate consultation of the trans schedule while he was walking to the doors. 20 minutes to his apartment, 30 to the shuttle dock, 10 to pack. If he risked a phone call to Whiter to request a rescue, it was a 90% certainty that Whiter couldn't do a damned thing against FSO before 11:45 or later, and he'd be screwed with Whiter for putting him in a position, with a capital P. You didn't crack a security screen. Not if you hope to keep your clearance in UDC computer tech. They'd get him back in maybe 6 days? Hell, 6 days too late if he was on humanitarian leave on B-Dock when the UDC filled the Stockholm post. He'd get the scraps, the cold leftovers after Meeker got posted, and Hamid, and Pinelli. The next best choice he had was to appeal to Whiter when he got back and hang on as staff till something else came through. Oh, 6 months, 7, 8 months on. Who knew? Decker had screwed up. The fleet was evidently about to lose its investment in him. And, not in his most copacetic state, Decker had asked for him? Ben thought, with every thump of the trans on its homebound course, I'll kill him when I get my hands on him. I'll fucking kill him. So, in case you were worried that Ben Pollard had somehow mellowed out and become less of a hemorrhoidal asshole, guess what? No, he's still kind of a dick. Kind of being underselling just how dickish Ben is. He's kind of a self-serving ass. He's a joke. Chapter 2. Ben hated institutions, hated hospital smells and institution colors, and most of all, he didn't look forward to this in his first hour on B-Dock. He felt like hell. He'd slept in a damn cubbyhole of a berth hardly larger than a miner ship spinner. His feet had swelled. He'd had sinus all the way. He'd spent too long in the null G in his life, and his body had a spiteful overreaction to the condition. They didn't issue pills and stim suits for a 3-day shuttle trip. No, that prescription's not on your records, Lieutenant. Sorry. If you just checked with medical. It was damned well going to be on the record when he left Sol, too. Talk to the doctors in this hospital, get some damn good out of this end of the trip, because he meant to be on that shuttle on its turnaround tonight. 6 hours was plenty of time to see Decker and get out of here. After 3 days of floating in a 3-berth passenger module on a cargo shuttle ahead of a load of sanitation chemicals and spare parts, he'd had no one to talk to but a couple of machinists who were into some vegetarian religion and hooked on some damn VR game they wanted to explain to him. And he had had ample time to drift weightless in the dark and think. Too much time to imagine this meeting and what kind of damage a pilot could take in an accident. Missing limbs. Blood. He hated blood. He really got sick at his stomach if there was blood. They'd had some sort of missile test that had gone bad out here. Nobody said what. There'd been a lot of long faces in technical. A lot of emergency meetings last week. Decker couldn't have been involved in any missile test. A pilot trainee didn't have anything to do with missile tests. Did he? Jackson had done the talking. But why in hell did a fleet captain sign the order and bust him out here? What was Decker that the fleet cared? The fleet was fighting for its life in the Appropriations Committee. Dumbass pilot cracked up and UDC priorities got overridden? For humanitarian reasons? Not in the military he knew. That was the tag end that had disturbed his sleep and his thinking moments. And his thinking moments. His thinking moments. His thinking moments. That was the tag end that had disturbed his sleep and his thinking moments all the way out here. Their high-level interest in this affair was what had his stomach upset, as much as the stink of disinfectant and pain and helplessness in this place. He didn't like this. God, he didn't like this. And if Decker wasn't dead, he was going to strangle him barehanded for writing him into that damned blank. God, he was. Reception desk. He presented his orders to the clerk and got a "Lieutenant Pollard, yes, sir," that did nothing for his stomach or his pulse rate. The reception got him a nurse, a doctor, and Decker's attending physician, all in increasingly short succession. "How is he?" Ben asked the last, bypassing long introductions. "What happened to him?" And the doctor said, starting off down the hall, "No change." "So when did that happen? When did this happen?" That's classified. More white coats. More people leaning into his face. They wanted him to open his eyes, but Decker knew the game. They wanted answers to fill the blanks they had on their slates, but they wanted their own answers, the way they wanted the case to be. Company doctors. He'd been here before, and they wouldn't listen. He asked, "Where's Corey?" Because sometimes he couldn't remember what had happened, or he did, but it was all a dizzy blur of black and lights. The ship was spinning. He fought to get to the controls because he had to stop that spin, with the blood filling his nose and choking his breath, and his hand dragging away with the spin, his grip going, "Corey, you damn bastard, stop!" But sometimes he came loose from that time, and he was in a hospital, or he was going to be, soon as Ben and Bird got him there, and they would lie to him and tell him there never had been a driver ship, and he never had had a partner named Corey. The company had lied to him. They said he was hallucinating, but it was all lies. And sometimes he thought the hospital was the hallucination, that it was all something his conscience had conjured to punish him for losing his grip on the counter and for losing the ship, for losing Corey and Bird. Sometimes he was back in the shower, and sometimes tied to the pipes, because he was crazy, and he couldn't figure out how the ship had come to the hospital. 30 days, half September, March 11th, and November. There were green coats now. Interns. He hoped for Tommy, but Tommy wasn't with them. "Where's Tommy?" he asked. "Why isn't Tommy on duty? God, it's a fire, isn't it? Meg? Meg? Wake up! God, don't die on me!"
Ensign Decker, you have a visitor.
"I don't want any fucking visitor. Get away from me. Get out of here."
Ensign Decker,
"Tell them to go to hell. I don't want any damn company lawyer. Put Tommy back on duty, hear me? I want Tommy back." They grabbed hold of his arms. They were going to put the restraints on. Tommy wouldn't do that. Tommy would ask, "Are you going to be quiet, Mr. Decker?" And he would say, "Yes, yes, I'll be quiet." And Tommy wouldn't use them. Wouldn't. But Tommy wasn't with them. And they did. They told him then if he wasn't quiet they'd have to sedate him. So he said, "I'll be quiet," and shut his eyes. "Decker," Ben said, and he opened his eyes. Ben was leaning over his bed. Ben was in uniform. UDC. That was different. But odder things happened in this place. He didn't blink. Things changed if you did. Finally he said, "Ben?"
Yeah.
There was a ship out there. He remembered that. "Ben, we've got to go back. Please, we've got to go back. Corey's still out there." Ben grabbed a fistful of his collar, leaned close, and said, in a low voice, "Decker, shut it down right now or I'm going to kill you. You hear me?" He said, "That's all right." He felt Ben's hand on him. He saw Ben's face. He knew where he was then. Bird was asleep, and Ben was about to beat hell out of him. But that was all right. He really liked Ben most of the time, and there hadn't been much to like where he'd been. So, as people can see, Decker,
Still a bit of a space case. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Isn't it lovely?
uh, what could a guy do? Ben disengaged himself, and Decker caught his hand. He pulled free and got out of the door to get his breath. The doctor was out there, several doctors this time.
He knows you,
Decker's surgeon said. Higgins was his name.
You're the first person he has recognized.
Fucking hell. Then he's cured. I'm out of here. Lieutenant Pollard, another doctor said, and offered his hand. "Lieutenant Pollard, I'm Dr. Evans, Chief of Psychiatry."
Fine. Good. He needs a psych. That's all that's going to help him. Lieutenant Pollard, look, what do you want from him? The guy's skits, completely off the scope. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what happened. Lieutenant Pollard. The psych motioned off down the farther hallway. There's coffee in the lounge. You've had a long flight. The psych wanted him to sit down and be reasonable, which he was in no mood to be. But coffee appealed to his upset stomach and his sleep-deprived nerves. And it was not at all, there we go, and it was not at all a good idea to have a psych telling the local CO you'd been hysterical. You didn't need that on a record behind another service's security screen. So he went with the psych. He went through the dance. White or black? Sugar. That's enough, thanks. Until he could get the weight off his feet, sink into a chair, and try not to let Evans see his hands shake while he was drinking. So what happened to him? He asked, before Evans could fire off his own questions. That's what we want to know. So how'd he get like this? That's another question. Deeper and deeper. Ben stared at the doctor and scowled. So a door got him. Is that it? A simulator did. Flight simulator? Decker? Hell of a simulation, Doctor. Didn't lock the belt. Strong dose of sedative in his bloodstream. Shit. Pills again. Evans said, We'd like to know how he got there. Or maybe not. You mean somebody put him there? It's one possibility. Guy has a talent for making friends. Yeah, there's probably a dozen candidates. Why do you say that? Psych question. He thought, because he's a fuck-up. Because he has this way of getting himself in trouble and slapping the hand that helps him. But that led to more questions, and screwed Decker worse than he was. Oh, thank you, C.J. Sherry, for putting in literally every piece of punctuation in the book. But that led to more questions, and screwed Decker worse than he was with this guy, to whom he owed nothing yet. He said, finally, Say I didn't really know him that well. He listed you as next of kin. It was a joke. The guy's full of them. Lots of laughs. We don't rule out suicide. Decker, he thought. Decker? Suicide? The idea was more than unlikely. It upset him. And he didn't figure that either why they could think that, if they knew Decker, which they might not, or how Decker could come to that, here, in this place that swallowed people down without a word. You don't agree? He shrugged. It's not him. It's just not him. You didn't come from where Decker came from, didn't survive what he'd survived, and check out like that, in a damn sim. Something wasn't right. Not with the questions, not with Decker lying in there thinking he was back in the belt, not with this whole max classified operation that took a will to live like Decker's and put him in that bed, in that condition. Decker had looked at him like he was what he'd been waiting for, and said, to his threat of killing him barehanded, That's all right. Every time you got near the guy, there was a disaster. Decker attracted disasters. You could feel it, and, God of all the Helldeck preachers, he wanted on that shuttle tonight. Do this effing job, get Decker to figure out where he was and when he was, make him talk to the psychs, and get out of here while there was still a chance of him making that interview, and getting out of this mess. I'll talk to him, he said. You're sure you're all right about You're sure you're all right about that? Another psych quiz. Correct answer. A long trip with no information, run in here straight from the mast. I was a little shaken up myself. He tossed off the rest of the coffee, got up and pitched the cup into the bin. I'm fine to talk to him. What do you want out of him? His health. Yeah, well, he'll pull it out. Knock him down and he bounces. Don't stress him, Lieutenant. I really don't advise another confrontation. He's been concussed. We want to keep that blood pressure under control. That was about worth a laugh. Deck was already stressed. Deck was in an out-of-control ship in a driver zone with his partner lost. He said soberly, I've no intention of upsetting him. The doctor opened the door. The doctor walked him back to Decker's room and signaled an orderly for a word aside in the hallway. Ben walked in, pulled a chair over, and sat down by Decker's bed. Decker's eyes tracked his entry, stayed tracked as he sat down. He wasn't sure how focused. Decker had been a real pretty boy a year ago, fancy dresser, rab hair, shaved up the sides. Still looked to be a rab job, give or take the bandage around the head, but the eyes were shadowed, one was bruised, the chin had a cut, a lip was cut. Not so long back. The hollow-cheeked, waxen look. Did you get that from a bashing about in a simulator for I totally lost my place. How did I do this? Still looked to be a rab job, give or take the bandage around the head, but the eyes were shadowed, one was bruised, the chin had a cut, lip was cut, not so long back. The hollow-cheeked, waxen look. Did you get that from a bashing about in a simulator a few days ago? You look like hell, Decker, me lad. Yeah, Decker said. You're looking all right. So, what happened? Decker didn't answer right off. He looked to be thinking about it. Then his chin began to tremble, and Ben felt a second's disgusted panic. Damn it, he didn't want to deal with a guy on a crying jag. But Decker said faintly, shakily, Ben, you'll want to hit me, but I really need to know. I really seriously need to know what time it is. What time it is? God. So what'll you give me for it? Ben. No, hell, I want you to give me something for it. I want you to tell me what the hell you're doing in here. I want to know what happened to you. Decker gave a shake of his head and looked upset. Tell me the time. Ben looked at his watch. All right, it's 15:45, June 19th. What year? 2324. That satisfy you? Decker just stared at him, finally blinked once. Look, Decker, nice to see you, but you really screwed everything up. I got orders waiting for me back at the base. I got a transfer that, excuse me, means my whole career, and if you'll just fucking cooperate with them, I can still catch a shuttle in a few hours and get my transfer back to Saul where I can stay with my program. Deck, come on. Do you seriously understand you're screwing up my life? Do me a favor. What? Tell the doctors what happened to you. Hear me? I want you to answer their questions and tell them what they want to hear. And I don't, damn it. And I don't, damn it. I want to be on that shuttle. You want me to call them in here so they can listen to you explain and I can get out of here? Decker shook his head. Decker, damn it, don't be like that. You're a pain in the ass, you know that? I got to get back. Then go. Go on. It's all right. It's not the hell all right. I can't get out of here until you tell them what they want to know. Come on. It's June 19th, 23-24. Argentina's won the World Cup. Bird's dead. Corey's dead. We came out here on a friggin' big ship neither of us is supposed to talk about. And Jenny Vanderbilt is top of the series. Do you remember what put you here? I can't remember. I don't remember. Because you climbed into a friggin' flight simulator tranked to the eyeballs. Does that jar anything loose? A blank stare, a shake of the head. Ben ran a hand over his head. God. It's just gone, Ben. Sometimes I think it's the ship again. Sometimes it's not. You're here, but I thought you were before. What are they saying about the sim? Decker. He gave a glance to the door, but the doctor types were conferring outside. He said, in a low voice, You're not hooked on those damn pills again, are you? Decker shook his head, scared, lost. Eyes shifted about, came back to him. Ben, I'm sorry. Please tell me the time again. He didn't hit Decker. He leaned forward and took Decker's hand hard in his, despite the restraints, and said, very quietly, "It's June 19th. Now tell me the year, Deck. I want the year. Right now. And you better not be wrong." Decker looked seriously worried. A hesitation. A tremor of the lips. 2324. Good. You got it memorized. Now there's going to be a test every few minutes, you hear me? I want you to remember that number. This is Sol 2. You had an accident a few days back. The doctors want to know. That's not so hard to hold on to, is it? I can't remember. I can't remember, Ben. It's just gone. Shit. He had a headache. He looked at Decker's pale, bruised, trusting face and wanted ever so much to beat him senseless. Instead, he squeezed Decker's hand. "Deck, boy, listen. I got a serious chance at Stockholm, you understand me? Nice lab job. I'm going to lose it if you don't come through. I really need you to think about the simulator." Decker looked upset. I'm trying. I'm trying, Ben. I really am." Something was beeping. Machine up there on the shelf. Doctors were in the door. Higgins said, "Lieutenant Pollard, he's getting tired. Better leave it. Ensign Decker, I'm Dr. Higgins. Do you remember me?" Decker looked at him and said faintly, "Ben?" "You do remember him," Ben said. "Hear me, or I'll break your neck." "Don't go." "He'll be back tomorrow." Whoops. "He'll be back No, that's Higgins. He'll be back tomorrow." "The hell," Ben said. "Decker, goodbye. Good luck. I gotta catch a shuttle. Stay the hell out of my life." "Lieutenant," that was Evans, "in the hall." "Hall?" Hall, hall. My throat." He went. He got his voice down and his breathing even. "Look, I've done my job. I'm no doctor. You're the psych. What am I supposed to do?" "You're doing fine. This is the first time he's been that sure where he is." "Fine. I've got orders waiting for me on Sol 1. I haven't got time for this." "That's not the way I understand your orders. You have a room assignment." "I haven't got any room assignment."
"In the hospice, a level up. It's a small facility, very comfortable. We prefer you be available for him 24 hours. His sleeping's not on any regular pattern."
"No way. I've got a return order in my pocket. My baggage is still right back there in customs. Nobody said anything about this going into another shift. That wasn't the deal."
"Nobody said anything about your leaving. You'd better check those orders with the issuing officer."
"I'll check it at the dock. I'll get this cleared up. Just give him my goodbyes. Tell him good luck. I hope he comes out all right. I hope he comes out all right. I won't be here in the morning."
"Hospice desk is on level 2, Lieutenant. You'll find the lift right down the corridor."
So, as before, CJ Cherry tends not to go super hard in fancy sci-fi doodadery, but very much into people, which honestly is kind of what sci-fi is really all about. It's they're people stories. So yeah, Decker broke it again. Ben having to pick up the pieces right now, and incidentally sets us up for a whodunit type scenario. Don't you love this? Is this not perfect? I love it. Whodunit? What actually happened to Decker? And why? Excuse me. I live for this. This is why I am here. Ben had been there a while. Ben had told him, but he couldn't depend on that. Ben came and Ben went, and sometimes Ben talked to him and told him about an accident in the Sims. Ben came and Ben whoops, but if it was a Sim, then maybe people he thought were dead weren't, even if they told him to so. The doctors lied to him. They regularly lied, and Tommy didn't come back. They kept changing doctors, changing interns, every time he got close to remembering. Only Ben. Ben came and he started to hope, and he knew that hope was dangerous. You didn't hope. You just lived. Ben asked him, was he on drugs? He had been once. He had been crazy once, now and again, but Ben and Bird had pulled him out. The ship was spinning. Corey was out there alone, and somebody had to pull him out. Ship was spinning. Pete was yelling. And Corey. Ben said he would kill him if he was crazy, and he hoped Ben would do that if he truly was, because he didn't want to live like that. Ben said remember, but he couldn't remember any specific time in The Sims. He could remember an examiner giving him his C3. He could remember the first time he'd seen the boards. Remembered pushing beams at Saul. Supervisor had said, all right, he could do that. He was underage, but they needed somebody who wouldn't ram a mass into the station hall. His head was bandaged. His ribs were. His knees ached like hell. He thought because he had hit the counter, trying to hit the button, but he wasn't sure of anything. You blinked and you got green numbers and lines, and if you followed them too far, you never came back. Mid-range focus. Back it up, all the way inside. There'd been an accident, and the ship had blown up, and his partners were dead, or maybe never existed. It was a Sim, bright ball of nuclear fire. And he was here, and they were in it, and it was all green glowing lines out there, whipping and snaking to infinity. He remembered faces now, people he thought he liked. Bird, Meg and Sal, Corey and Graf, Pete and Ellie and Falcone. Faces. Voices. Falcone yelling, "Hey, Dex, see you tomorrow." But Falcone wouldn't. Ellie wouldn't. They never would. "You damn bastards!" he yelled. "Bastards!" Interns came running, grabbed hold of him. "No," he said, reminded what happened when he yelled. "No! Tommy!" "Get the hypo," one said, and he got a breath. He got a little sanity and said, "I'm not violent. I don't need it. It's all right. Let go, damn it. Get the doctor." They eased up. They stopped bruising his arms and just held him still. "Just be quiet, sir. Just be quiet." "No shots. No damn shots." "Doctor's orders, sir." "I don't need one. I swear to you, I don't need one." "Doctor says you're not getting any rest, sir. You better have it, just to be sure." He looked the intern in the face. Big guy, red face and freckles, lying across him. Out of breath. So was he. And two other large guys who were leaning on him and holding his legs. "Sorry," he said between breaths. "Don't want to give you guys trouble. I really don't want to. I just don't want any shot right now." "Sorry too, sir. Doctor left orders. You don't want to be any trouble, right?" "No," he said. He shook his head. He made up his mind he had better change tactics. Agreeing with them got him out of this place. It would. It had. He couldn't remember. It was only the drugs he had to worry about. "Just hold still, sir. All right?" "Yeah," he said, and the hypo kicked against his arm. Stung like hell. His eyes watered. He said, "You fucking get off me. I can't breathe. Let me up, damn it." "Soon's you shut your eyes, sir. Just be quiet. You loosened a couple of John's teeth yesterday. You remember?" He didn't remember. But he said, out of breath, "I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I'm better. A lot better." "That's good, sir." "Friend of mine was in here," he said. But the drug was gathering thick about his brain. He said it again, afraid he might not remember when he waked. or that it hadn't happened at all. He went to sleep when they drugged him, and he waked up, and he never knew where or when. He was going out now. He felt it happening. And he was scared as hell where he would wake up, or what would be true, or where the lines would lead him. "Ben!" he cried. "Bird! Ben, come back! Ben, don't go! They killed my partners, Ben! They fucking killed us!"
This isn't validated.
The check-in clerk said, and slid the travel voucher across the desk in the .6G of 8 deck.
You need an exit stamp.
Ben took the voucher with a sinking heart. "What exit stamp? Nobody said anything about an exit stamp. There's no exit stamp in the customs information."
It's administrative, sir. Regulation. I have to have a stamp.
God, look, call Sol 1.
You do that from Basecom, the clerk said, and added without expression, but you need an authorization from your CO to do that, sir.
"And where do I get that?" You didn't yell at clerks. It didn't get you anything to yell at clerks. Ben said quietly, restrainedly, "My CO's on Sol 1. I need the UDC officer in charge."
This is a fleet transport voucher.
"I know it is," Ben said, "but this uniform is UDC. Is it at all familiar to you? Where's the UDC officer in charge?" The clerk got a confused look and focused behind him, where someone had come into the office. To stand in line was Ben's initial reckoning, but whoever it was said then, "Lieutenant Pollard?" The voice he'd heard before, a long time ago. He turned around, a little careful in the .6G, saw a blue uniform, a black pullover, a thin, angular face, and nondescript pale hair. Brass on the collar. The trip out from the belt, the Hamilton, and Jupiter's Well. Graf. Fleet Lieutenant Jurgen Graf. Carrier pilot, junior grade. "There's an office free," Graf said, meaning very evidently they should go there. Now. Urgently. A fleet lieutenant wanted to talk to him, and he was stuck on fleet orders in something that increasingly felt like a deliberate black hole. "I've got a flight out of here at 1800. They're talking about an exit stamp. I need some kind of clearance." "You don't have a flight out of here. Not this one." He slowed down, so that Graf had to pull a stop and look at him. "Sir, I need this straightened out. With apologies, sir, but I've got a transfer order waiting for me back on Sol 1. I was told not to communicate with my CO. I'm not fleet personnel. I understand the inter-service agreements, but 5 minutes. I'm UDC personnel. I want to see a UDC ranking officer. Sir, now." 5 minutes, Graf repeated. "You don't want your friend screwed, do you?" "My friend—" "Sir, I don't care what happens to my friend. I've got an appointment waiting for me back on Sol 1, and if I lose it, I'm screwed. I'm just a little uneasy about this whole damn arrangement. Sir, this isn't what I was told." "There's another shuttle out the 22nd, 2100 hours." Ben caught a breath. 3 days. But Graf's moves meant business, and you didn't argue a security matter on the open dock. No. Even if it was blackmail. Extortion. Kidnapping. Graf waited. He came ahead. He went with Graf into a freight office, and Graf waved the lights on. "Yes, sir," he said. "We need him," Graf said. "We need him to remember." "Sir, I just graduated from TI. If I'm not back there for the interviews, they're going away. They're going to assign those slots, and I'm stuck teaching JL programming to a class full of wide-eyed button pushers. Sir, excuse me, But I've not been in contact with any officer in my chain of command. I've gone along with this on the FSO's word it had notified my CO. I'm not sure at this point I'm not AWOL. You're not. You're cleared. I've got your word on that. I haven't seen any order but the one that had me report to the FSO on 1. What have you done to me? You have my word. I'll get a message to your CO. You mean they haven't? I'll double check. We've played poker, haven't we, Mr. Pollard? Yes, sir. Days of poker. Him, Decker, Graff. No damn thing else to do on a half-built carrier. This is poker, Graff said, for the major stakes. How is he? What does it matter? What's he into? Say I need him sane. He's never been sane. Don't joke like that. In some quarters they might take you seriously. I am serious. The guy's good, but his tether on reality is just a little frayed. Maybe that's what it takes to do what he does. He stood there close to Graff, looking into Graff's sober face in this very unofficial office, and suddenly wondering who and what Graff was talking about, and what Decker did regularly do that had put him where he was. He said, carefully, Decker got lost out in the belt, banged around a lot, real disoriented. We know that. And how much else? Ben wondered. God, how much else? News didn't escape the belt. Security didn't let anything get out, even yet. Everything about the mining operation out there was under wrap. You didn't know how much the fleet might know, or what tiny, inadvertent slip would let them guess what they'd done back there and what they might have been involved in that might screw a security clearance for good. I knew this man a handful of months. I've seen him like this before, when he first got out of hospital on R2. I can't make him make sense till he wants to make sense. I couldn't then. Nobody can. You made a good advance on it. 3 days, Lieutenant. I want him to talk. Breath came short. Do I get to beat it out of him? Let's be serious, Lieutenant. What am I supposed to be asking? Have I got clearance to hear it? Or what happens when he does talk? What am I looking for? As much as you can know, and it's not been released yet. There was an accident. Decker wasn't in it. Friends of his were. Decker's crew was lost. Oh, shit. Top Command subbed in another pilot with Decker's crew on a test run. The test didn't go right. Total loss. Decker was hospitalized, treated for shock. The day he got out, he either climbed into a simulator under the influence of drugs, or something else happened. It's a matter of some interest. Which? Ben chewed his lip. Missile test, they'd said on Sol 1. Tech committee meetings. Place crawling with brass and VIPs. Hell. So, isn't there an access record? Computers can be wrong. Can't they? Ben's heart rate picked up. He hoped to hell there wasn't a monitor hearing it. He tried to think of some scrap to hand Graff for goodwill's sake. He finally said, Yes, they can be. I want him functioning, Graff said. Say you're on inter-service loan, at high levels. It could be good, it could be bad. To take maximum advantage of that, you need to deliver. Graff pulled a thick envelope from his jacket and held it out to him. He listed you as next of kin, so you have a right to see this. I'm not his next of kin. He's got a mother. She's specifically excluded. Don't worry, there's nothing in this packet outside your security clearance. He took it. He didn't want to. I wouldn't leave that material lying about unattended, Graff said. All the same. You've got your quarters in hospital. I can't order you not to use the phone. But if you contact anyone else, do you understand me? You're not behind our screen any longer. Take my personal advice. Get back to the hospital and stay there. And don't use that phone. He looked at Graff a long, long moment. Lieutenant J.G., junior grade. Carrier Command Officer. A Tech 1 to a Tech 2's rank. But he had the impression Graff was leaning on some executive and clandestine authority to do what he was doing. It was in Graff's tone, in the clear implication he should avoid his own chain of command. Whose office does this originate in, sir? Do you mind to tell me how official this is? Who's in charge? Ultimately, the captain. 2 and 2 suddenly made 4. Q. Sole FSO. He looked Graff in the eyes and thought, I don't like this. Damn, I don't. He said, Is your captain the only authority that's covering me? Graff said, No. Conrad Mazian? The EC militia commander who was romancing his way through the UN hearings? In which service, sir? I want to know. I need to know that. I want orders in writing. Ben, take my word. I'd go back to headquarters immediately if I were you. I'd stay quiet. I'd do everything I could to finish my job, if I were in your place. Graff opened the door and shut off the lights. If you need me, for any reason, tell Dr. Evans. Honk. Sorry. Disadvantage of having open windows. Curiouser and curiouser. We also learn very much earlier than in Heavy Time that there are shenanigans occurring. And we just don't know what. And it's like Heavy Time, kind of a long time figuring out exactly what went down and why. And all the while, major events are moving. There are wheels in motion. The key card worked, at least. The room in the hospice was an institutional cubbyhole with a bunk, a phone, an ordinary flat vid. And no baggage. Delivered, Customs had said. Customs had showed him the slip. Delivered at 1500 hours. God only where. He set down the soft drink he had carried up from level 1. He looked at his watch. 1845 hours. He picked up the phone and went through Hospital Downside to call Customs. This is Lieutenant Benjamin Pollard. I was just there. My baggage isn't here. Is it still being delivered? Who did you talk to? He sat down on the bed. He pulled a vending machine sandwich from his pocket, lay it on the table by the soft drink, and pulled out the Customs claims ticket. The claim number is 9798. A pause. It's been delivered, sir. You didn't deliver it to HOS 28. That's what's on the ticket, sir. That's not what's in HOS 28, soldier. I want to know where my baggage is right now. That's all the record I have, sir. You could check with lost baggage at 0700. This shift doesn't find baggage, is that it? It just loses it? A moment of silence. I'll make a note of it, sir. Thank you. He punched out. He did not break the phone. He took a sip of his soft drink and unwrapped the sandwich. No official privileges. No official assignment. No cafeteria open at this hour. No card with food privileges. He had 50 on him. Period. And Mr. Lieutenant J.G. Jurgen Graff and his unnamed captain hadn't seen to that detail. God, he didn't like the feeling he had. Bet that Graff had contacted Major Whiter? Hell if. Bet that the UDC knew where he was right now? He looked at the phone and thought how he could call the UDC CO here. He could do that. He could break this wide open and maybe be a hero to the UDC. Or get caught in the middle of something. or get caught in the middle of something, behind a security screen that didn't have Stockholm anywhere inside it. A screen confined to this place. Right now, he could plead total ignorance. Right now, he had a transfer order signed by Q and a security stamp on it, and he could plead he had regarded the order exactly the way it said in the inter-service protocols. And he could do what they wanted and get out of here. Damn it, he didn't know why Decker was crazy. Anybody who wanted to fly little ships and get shot at was crazy. If even the simulator could half kill a guy. He could have said, get Decker off the drugs. He could have said, don't sedate him. But Decker knew too much about him. Damn him. Decker knew enough to babble things that could end up on his record. Blech. Decker knew enough to babble things that could end up on his record if Decker got talking to the psych. And if Decker had told certain things to Graf, God, Graf could have been sifting everything he had said against information he had no idea Graf had and weighing it for truth. Graf could have had technical backup doing it. Big time. Interactive logic stuff you had no good chance to evade without a clearer head and a calmer pulse rate than he had had in that interview. God only what Decker had involved himself in, or why someone might have wanted Decker dead. Or what might happen if he picked up that phone right now and tried to get through to the UDC office via hospital communications. He didn't know enough about how the lines were drawn here. He didn't want to know enough. Do what Graf wanted and be on that shuttle on the 22nd. That was all. Any way he could. And if the UDC did land on him, spill everything immediately. Total innocence. No, sir, they showed me orders. They said it was cleared. Somebody subbed a pilot on a test run? And somebody put Decker into a simulator drugged out of his mind? Bloody hell. He pulled out the envelope from inside his jacket, opened it, and pulled out cards and pictures, a couple of licenses and old IDs. Flight certification. Picture of Decker and 3 other people. Group shot. All in fleet uniform. Woman and 2 guys besides Decker. All smiling. Arms over each other's shoulders. Old vid advert for a truly scuzz sex item. God, we all have our secrets, Deck lad. Picture of Sol Station. Picture of a couple of people outside a trans station. Picture of Mars base from orbit. If there'd been any of Corey Salazar, Decker had lost those a long time ago. Data card. The phone had a reader, but he shoved the card into his own. Personal card showed vid rentals, commissary charges, postage charges, bank records, bits and pieces of Decker's life since they'd parted company. Lad had 5300.87 cc to his account and no debts. Not bad. Not rich either. The other data card was old notes and mail. Not much of it. Notes from various people. 1 letter months ago from Ingrid Decker. 4 this last year from Meg Cady. So Meg did write him. He would never have figured Meg for the letter-writing kind. Would never have figured Meg for a lot else, either. He keyed up Meg's last letter, scanned at random through what must have cost a Shepherd spacer a mint to send. Can't complain. Doing fine. I'm working into the crew. Got myself onto the pilot list. Sal and I dropped into the hole, just on a look-see. Maybe it's what we are now. Maybe it's just the place is duller. It doesn't feel the same. So what does, he thought, and thought about Sal, and good times in the hole's back rooms. But Sal Abujib probably had herself a dozen guys on a string by now, swaggering about in Rab Cut and Shepherd Flash, visiting pricey places like Scorpio's, if Scorpio's still existed. Sal had her a berth, had her a whole new class of guys to pick from. And Ben Pollard had never gotten a letter from Sal Abujib. A hello from Decker once, months ago. He'd said hello back. Only communication they'd had. And it was on here. Hope you're doing all right. Everything fine. Only long-distance letter he'd ever gotten, tell the truth. And what did you answer to people you didn't want to be tied to? Good luck, goodbye, Decker? Bills. Note from one Falcone. Deck, we don't like it either, but nothing we can do right now. They want a show. We'll sure as hell give them one. He skimmed back to the letter from Ingrid Decker. A short one. Don't come here. I don't want to see you. You went out there by your own choice, and maybe it wasn't any of your fault what happened, but things are hard enough, Paul, and I don't need any more trouble. Stop sending me money. I don't want any more ties to you. I don't want any more letters. Leave me alone. Shit. He set the reader on his knee, gave a deep breath, thinking. Shit, Deck. He'd grown up on his parents' insurance himself, both of them having been so careless as to take a deep dive with their whole crew. At first, he'd really resented them doing that, thought if they'd given a damn about their kid, they wouldn't have been that careless. But he'd stared into Jupiter's well himself once, and he knew how subtle and sudden that slope was. In the pit of his stomach he knew it now, and dreamed about it on bad nights. But his mama had never written him a letter like this one, and in that cold little spot marked Who's Left to Care, he guessed why Decker might have written him as next of kin. Meg, with her letters about how she was working into the crew and everything was going fine for her. Deck wouldn't risk having another woman writing him, saying, Get out of my life, you scuzz. Decker already knew what Ben Pollard thought. And if Decker was in trouble that needed a next of kin, whose life was he going to interrupt, who might remotely even know him? He cut the reader off. He sat there in a cardboard cubby of a room with no damn baggage, and for a moment or two had remorseful thoughts about Paul Decker. Wished maybe he'd written a line or two more back then, like, hell, he didn't know. Something polite. What friggin' time is it? 2 months in a miner ship with Decker off his head, asking him the time every few minutes. So here he was, back there again. Locked into a hospital with Decker. One part of him felt sorry for Decker, and the other panicked part of him still wanted to beat the hell out of the fool and get out of here. Damn it, what am I supposed to do with this damn card? Why didn't Graff give this stuff to the psych? Sub in another pilot, did they? Why, if not Decker's attitude? And who did it, if not the CO who's supposed to want this stuff from Decker? Real brand new ship, Decker said once. That's why the fleet had wanted him. He'd been real excited about it, wanted it more than anything in his life. And a crew's dead, and Decker's screwed like that? He sat there on the side of the bed, desperately, urgently, wanting off Sol too. He didn't at the moment care where. This whole deal had the stink of death about it. Serious death, Sal would say. No shit, Sal. What do I do with the guy? Chapter 3. Mr. Graff, urgent word with you. Down the hall. Sir, please. 0645, and the breakfast line in the green room was backed up to the door. Hardly time for coffee in the 15 minutes before he was due in Tanzer's office, and Jurgen Albrecht Graff punched white coffee instead of black for his stomach's sake. Can it wait? He asked without looking at Mitch, and caught the cup that tilted sideways and straightened it in time. Held it while it filled. No, sir. A number of us want to talk, sir. Urgent business. Spit and polish. From Mitch. There was no one else in the rec nook of the mess hall, and no reasonable chance of being overheard in the clatter of trays. Tanzer wants to talk too. I have an appointment in 15. Hell. Mitch was shepherd. Whoops. Yes, awesome. It is indeed Chapter 3. We're going to get through all of Chapter 3, and we'll call it at that point, but that's going to be a while. Chapter 3 is long. I would have loved to get to chapter 5, but like chapter 5 is, or chapter 4 is like, I don't know, 40 pages or something ridiculous. It's a long chapter. Yeah, it's about 40 pages. Now I just have to find where I put chapter 4. Where are you? There it is. All right, let's start the chapter over. I don't even know where I am now. Oh, no, there we are. I know where I am. No, sir, a number of us want to talk, sir. Urgent business. Spit and polish. From Mitch. There was no one else in the rec nook of the mess hall, and no reasonable chance of being overheard in the clatter of trays. Danzer wants to talk too. I have an appointment in 15. Hell. Mitch was shepherd, aggressively shepherd, shaved up the sides, couple of earrings, bracelet. I swore you'd be there, sir. I'd swore you'd be there, sir. Graff lifted out the cup and said, All right, 5, and stole a sip as he walked with Mitch out the main door and down the hall to the conference rooms. Door to 6A was open. Mitch's tech crew was there, Paulie and Jacoby, Jamil and his long scanner, Trace. Graff recognized a delegation when he saw it. Tanzer had said, Don't discuss the hearings. Patently, that was not the intention here. Mitch shut the door. Sir, we're asking you to get one of us in front of the committee. Won't happen, Graff said. No chance. You want to get a haircut, Mitch? Hell if. That's an Earth committee. Blue skies they come. They won't communicate. Yeah, Jacoby said. Is that why Tanzer killed Pete and Ellie? Couldn't let a belter pull it off. Ease off, Jacoby. They won't let us in hospital. You seen Decker? You seen him, Lieutenant? I'm not going to remember that he's Australian, and I'm sorry for that in advance. I'm faking it. Paulie muttered, wouldn't be surprised if Tanzer ordered him put in that machine. Didn't want him at the hearings. Shut that down, right, Graff said. Right now. Mitch folded his arms, set a foot on a chair, and said, Somebody better hear it. They didn't want any belter son of a bitch in front of the cameras. Decker couldn't fly it? Then why didn't they sub the crew? Ask them that. Mitch, I hope somebody does have the brains to ask it, but there's nothing I can do. They're not going to ask me that. Hell if, sir. Tanzer's pets are killing us. You want me to shave up like a... Mitch looked at him and his regulation trim, and shut the epithet off unsaid. You get me in front of that hearing, and I'll look like a UDC accountant. Mitch, I'm in a position. You're in a position. You're running safe behind shields, sir. We're the ones with our ass on the line. Paulie said, and they can't automate these sumbitches any further. Why don't they ask somebody who knows? Oh, wait, no, that's Paulie. Shit. Paulie's an engineer, okay? So he's actually Scottish. And they can't automate these sumbitches any further. Why don't they ask somebody who knows? The designers will. Staten techs here. They'll ask. That much I'll get a chance to tell them. Ask 'em about the sim. Female. Ask 'em about the sim. Female voice. Trace. I hate it when they introduce me to 10 new characters and I can't remember them. Female voice. Trace. They're not interested. This is going to be a whitewash, start to finish. Wait. The designers have to talk to us, Trace. We'll get our word in. Mitch said, Wait, no. What? Shit. Ask 'em about the shim. Female voice. Trace. They're not interested. This is going to be a whitewash start to finish. The designers have to talk to us, Trace. We'll get our word in. Mitch said, The engineers have to talk to us. The execs and the polycrats won't, and they have the say. Mitch, I can't listen to this.
Tanzer is a hidebound blue skyer son of a bitch who thinks. Yeah, the A is italicized, not the bitch. Tanzer is a hidebound blue skyer son of a bitch who thinks because he grew up with a rule book up his ass is a because who thinks because he grew up with a rule book up his ass is a reason to try to tell any spacer his business, or to think that the salute the logo dumbasses they pulled in off the guard and the system test programs could do the job with these ships. They can fly, Mitch. Yeah, they can fly, like Wilhelmsen. Nothing wrong with Wilhelmsen. Listen to me. Shut it down and listen. If we have a technical at work, we want to find it. We don't want to whitewash that either. We have something more at issue here than Wilhelmsen. Yeah, Polly muttered. Tanzer. Mitch said, nothing wrong with that ship. Everything wrong with the pilot. And they aren't going to find the solution to what happened to Wilhelmsen in Tanzer's fucking rule book, sir. Let's just find out, shall we? Just make the point with them, Lieutenant. Wilhelmsen wasn't set with the crew. Wilhelmsen should have said not ready. He was the pilot. He had the final say-so. Demo be damned. It was his responsibility to do that. Yes, it was his responsibility, but it wasn't in his judgment to do it, or he would have done it. The guy's dead. He got it the same as the rest, Mitch. Well, let's give the experts a chance to figure out what. What chance have they got if they're not getting the information? Their experts are as blue sky as Tanzer is. Jacoby said, it's the attitude in the UDC brass. They murdered Wilhelmsen, and Wilhelmsen murdered that crew. That's what they need to hear. All right, but there's nothing I can do to get you in there right now, and if you act the fools and screw this, they'll pull those design changes and you'll be flying targets. Now leave it. Get off my tail. Give me a chance. That's the order. I've got a meeting. There was quiet. It wasn't a happy quiet. Graff handed the coffee to Mitch. You drink it. Whoop. He started for the door in a dead silence and looked back. It's my life too, guys. You shit me, a carrier's gone. Program's gone. You understand that? They weren't used to hearing Helm 2 talk like that. Not at all. There were sober faces. Mitch said, No offense, Lieutenant. Graff passed a hand over his close-cropped hair, said, Hey, I have to deal with 'em, guys. And ducked out, with an uncomfortable feeling of being square in the middle. Merchanter, and neither Shepherd nor regular UDC. Not part of the RAB the EC had exiled to the belt, not part of the EC either, in the sense the RAB had resisted it. Didn't even understand the politics in the 15, but he was getting to. Fast. They'd hauled the Shepherd pilots into the program for their expertise. They weren't 18-year-olds, and they damned sure weren't anybody's boys. You didn't use that word with them. Didn't lead them, no way in hell. You fed them the situation and showed them where it was different from what they knew. You showed them the feel of it and let it sink into their bones, and they showed the interactive systems new ways to conceptualize. They designed a whole new set of controls around the Shepherds and software to display what they saw in their in-system trained heads. Explain that to Colonel Evan Tanzer of UDC R&D. God, he wished the captain were back here, that one of the captains would turn up. Kreshov hadn't shown in-system for weeks, and exactly how it happened that one of the captains wasn't here at B-Dock at the same time a stray investigative subcommittee had outflanked Q at Seoul and gotten here unchecked, he didn't know. He couldn't even swear FleetCom was secure from the UDC code experts. Whoops. He couldn't even swear. I'm dying. He couldn't even swear FleetCom was secure from UDC code experts. Shepard's thought so, but he wouldn't commit any more to it than he had. Not now. Not lately, in Sol System, where the enemy was mindsets that wouldn't understand the realities in the beyond. The Belt was closer to the beyond than it was to Earth. And closer to it than Tanzer by a far shot. Always Tanzer, who'd been sitting here in R&D so long they dusted him. 0657, by the clock on the wall. He walked down the corridor. He walked into Tanzer's office, and Tanzer's aide said, "Go right in." He did that. He saluted, by the book. Tanzer saluted. They stared at each other, and Tanzer said, "Lieutenant Benjamin J. Pollard. Does the name evoke memory?" Shot across the bow. Graf kept all expression off his face. "Yes, sir. Friend of Decker's. Listed as next of kin on his card." "Is that your justification for releasing those records to Sol?" "Captain Q's orders, sir. He needs all the accident reports." "Is this your justification for issuing a travel voucher?" "I didn't issue the travel voucher. Mr. Pollard's presence here isn't at my request." "Lieutenant Graf, you're a hair-splitting liar. You're a troublemaker, and I resent your attitude." "On the record, sir, I hardly think I can be held accountable." "That's what you think. You're sabotaging us. You're playing politics with my boys' lives, and you have no authorization to bring in any outsider or to be passing unauthorized messages outside this facility to other commands." "This is my chain of command, sir. Decker is my personnel, and Q is my commanding... K-E-U, by the way, is Q. Q? Q? I don't know how that's pronounced. I'm going with Q because it's easier. Okay? Okay. Shit, where was I? That is my chain of command, sir. Decker is my personnel, and Q is my commanding officer. Sir, I notify him on all the casualties. What Captain Q does is not in my control. And if the question arises, I will testify that, in my opinion, Decker was not in that simulator by choice. Sir. Tanzer's fist came down on the desk. I don't have anything convenient to slam, so you're just going to have to pretend you hear it. No, you know what? Fuck it. I'm clearing space. Hell with this. Tanzer's fist came down on the desk. "I'm in command of this facility, Lieutenant Graf. Lieutenant Graf, the fact that your commander saw fit to leave a junior lieutenant in command of the rider trainees and the carrier does not give you authority over any aspect of this operation, and it does not give you authority to issue passes or to take communications to anyone outside of Basecom. Do you understand me?" "Where it regards your command, yes, Colonel. But I'm responsible to Captain Q for the communications he directly ordered me to make, and which I will continue to make on FleetCom. Lieutenant Pollard is here on humanitarian leave in connection with fleet personnel. He's prioritied elsewhere. He's here temporarily and has adequate security clearance to be here." "He's also UDC personnel." "He's under inter-service assignment, on leave, and not available to R&D. "A friend of Decker's. Let me tell you, I've had a bellyful of your recruits, and I'm sick and tired of the minor riffraff and psychological misfits washing up on the shores of this program. Your own captain's interference with design has given this program a piece of junk that can't be flown." "Not true. A piece of junk that works in the sims and not in the field, Lieutenant, because it doesn't take into account human realities. That firepower can't be turned over to adrenaline-high, games-playing freaks, Mr. Graf, and that machine can't rely on the 50%ers on the sims. How many ships are you going to lose on that 50%? $4 billion per ship and the time to train the crew, and you're going to gamble that on 50% of the time the pilot's nerves hold out for the time required? We're pushing human beings over their design limits, and they're dying, Mr. Graf. They're ending up in hospital wards." Wilhelmsen didn't die of fatigue, Colonel. He died of communications failure. He died of not working with his own crew. He skitzed. For 1 nanosecond, he skitzed and forgot where in hell he was in his sequence. There's an interdict on that move. It's supposed to be in the pilot's head. And it failed, Colonel. He failed. That's the bottom line. Decker ran that same flight on Sim, and he's lying delirious in hospital. Don't let me hear you use that word skits again, Lieutenant, except you apply it to your boy. There's the problem in that crew. There's the troublemaker that had to prove his point, had to shoot his mouth off. Decker didn't run that Sim, and the word is concussion, Colonel, from the impact of an unsecured body in that pod. He didn't forget to belt in. He was suited up. The flight suits keep your feet from swelling, Colonel. Decker's been exposed to prolonged zero-G. The other crews say, he was up there on drugs, Lieutenant. Read the medical report. He was high on trank. He was in possession of a tape he had no business with, and he and his attitude got in that pod together. Let's admit what happened up there and quit trying to put Decker's smartass maneuver off on any outside agency. There wasn't one. I intend to find out what did happen. Do you? Do you? Let me lay this word in your lap. Either you come up with proof that'll stand up in court-martial, or this investigation is closed. Decker climbed into that pod on drugs because he has an attitude, the same as all the other misfits this facility's been loaded with. He believes he's cornered the market on right. He's a smartass who thinks his reflexes make up for his lack of discipline, and if you drop that chaff in the hearing, you won't like the result. If you want this program to fly, and I assume you do, then you'd better reflect very soberly what effect your appearance and your testimony this afternoon is going to have on your captain's credibility, on the credibility of your service and the judgment of its personnel. Don't speculate. Keep to the facts. The facts are, Decker saw what was happening. He called the right moves. It's on the mission control tape. You're so damned cocksure what your boys can do, mister, but it's easy to call the right moves when you're not the one in the pilot's seat. You won't sit those controls. You won't fly those ships. Will you? Fair question, except they'd been over that track before. That's exactly the point. I'm not synced to a rider crew. Cross-training would risk both ships. The truth is, Lieutenant, your fleet doesn't want its precious essential personnel flying a suicide ship. Your fleet won't let go of its harebrained concept before it stinks. Your Conrad Mazian isn't a ship designer. He isn't an engineer. He's a merchant captain in a ragtag militia trying to prove it's qualified for strategic decisions. This ship needs interdicts on a pilot that's stressing out. That ship needs its combat edge, Colonel. If Wilhelmsen had an AI breathing down his neck, he'd have one more thing on his mind. Is the damn thing going to take my advice or not? At what mission-critical split second that I happen to be right is it going to cut me out of the loop? You can't cripple a ship with a damned know-it-all robot snatching control away because the pilot pushed the G's for a reason that, yes, might be knowingly suicidal, for a reason that wasn't in the mission profile. Besides which, long scan's after you, and what are you going to do? Give a Union long scanner 100% certainty an AI is going to interdict certain moves? If he knows your cutoffs, he knows your blind spots. If he knows you can't push it and he can, what's he going to do, Colonel? When the psychological signs are there, you're going to lose that ship. That's 100% certainty, and nobody else is going to be exceeding that limit. Wilhelmsen was leaning hard on the assists. He could have declined that one target. That's inside the parameters. That's a judgment a rider's going to have to make. But he'd have looked bad for the senators. He wanted that target. That's an attitude. There's a use for that. There's a use for that in combat, not for a damned exhibition. Wilhelmsen was saving the program, Lieutenant, saving your damned budget appropriation in equipment that's got 6 men in the hospital and 17 dead. You don't push machines or human beings past the destruct limit, and you don't put equipment out there that self-destructs on a muscle twitch. The pilot was showing symptoms. The AI should have kicked him out of the loop right then, but it can't do that. You say he can't have it breathing down his neck. A $4 billion missile with a dead man's switch. That's what you've got. It needs an integrative AI in there. Watch the pilots cut it off, which you can't do with that damn tetralogic system you're talking about. It's got to be in the loop. Talking is like taking, but with an L. Watch the pilots cut it off, which you can't do with that damned tetralogic system you're talking about. It's got to be in the loop talking to the interactives constantly, and no matter the input it's got after. Its logic systems are exactly the same as the next ones, same as the ships are. The only wild card you've got is the humans, the only thing that keeps the enemy long scanners guessing. The best machine you've got can't outguess the human long scanner. Why should you assume they're going to outperform the pilot? Because the long scanner can't kill the crew. The hell he can't. Not in that sense. Your tests don't simulate combat. That's what we've been telling you. You keep concentrating on the fire rate, always the damned fire rate, and you're not dealing with the reason we recruited these particular crews. Nobody at Lendler Corp has been in combat. None of your pilots have been. The UDC hasn't been since it was founded. Your tests are set up wrong. Not saying Tanzer himself hadn't been in combat. Red in the face, Tanzer got a breath. Let's talk about exceeding human limits, Lieutenant. What happened out there was exactly why we've got men in hospital over there who can't walk a level floor without staggering. It's why we've had cardiac symptoms in men under 30, and those aren't from 4-hour runs. A jab of the finger in his direction. Let me tell you, Lieutenant, I've met the kind of attitude your command is fostering among the trainees. Show-outs and ego freaks, and I wish them out of my command. You may have toddled down a deck in your diapers, and so may Mazian's ragtag enlistees out of the belt. But how are you going to teach them anything when they already know it all, and you acquired your know-how by superior genes? What? Shit. I lost track of the sentence. You may have toddled down a deck in your diapers, and so may have Mazian's ragtag enlistees out of the belt. But how are you going to teach them anything when they already know it all, and you acquired your know-how by superior genes? You can't lose 50% of your ships and crews at every pass. 96% retrievability. Wasn't that the original design criterion? Or isn't that retrievability word going to be in the manual when we put this ship on the line? If a Union arms compa gets your numbers, you have 0 retrievability, Colonel. That's my point. You have to exceed your own numbers. You have to surprise your own interfaces in order to surprise that other ship's computers, and that means being at the top of the architecture of your adaptive assists. The enemy knows your name out there. Union says, that's Victoria, that's Fitzroy or Graf at helm, because Victoria wouldn't go in with Helm 3. They know you, and they know your style, and it's in their double A's, but you innovate, and they innovate. One AI sitting on top of the human and his interfaces is like any other damn AI sitting on top of the interfaces. There aren't that many models. The enemy knows them all, and the second its logic signature develops in the enemy's intelligence about you, hell, they'll have a fire track lying in wait for you. Then you better damn well improve your security, hadn't you? Okay, 1 sec, I gotta take a break. My throat's dying here.
All right, sorry about that. I was out of water. All right.
Then you'd better damn well improve your security, hadn't you?
Colonel, there are 4 manufacturers in friendly space for this tetralogic equipment, and we can't swear there's not an eye sitting right outside the system right now. Any merchanter who ever came into the system could have dropped one before the embargo, and it's next to impossible to find it. Merchanters are your friends and your enemies. That's the war the company made, and that's what's going on out there. They don't all declare their loyalties, and a lot of them haven't got any. Not them and not us. They'll find out the names. They'll find out the manufacturers and the software designers. They'll learn us. That's a top priority. Who's at helm and who's in command. And if it's even 1 in 4 brands of Tetralogic, all the more reason for interchangeable personnel. It doesn't work that way. You don't go into an engagement with anybody who just happens to be on watch. You try to get your best online. No questions. You don't trade personnel and you don't trade equipment. You haven't time at point 5 light coming down off jump to think about what ship you're in or what crew you're with. I'm telling you, Colonel, my captain has no wish to raise the substitution as an issue against your decisions. But on his orders, as judiciously as I can, I am going to make the point it was a critical factor. We cannot integrate a computerized ship into our operations. In that condition, it is no better than a missile.
You haven't the credentials to say what it is and isn't, Lieutenant. You're not a psychiatrist and you're not a computer specialist.
I am a combat pilot, one of 2 at this base. A cold, dark silence.
I'll tell you, if you want to raise issues this afternoon, I'm perfectly willing to make clear to the committee that you're a composite, Lieutenant, a shell steered by non-command personnel and an absentee captain, and you clearly don't have the administrative experience to handle your own security, much less speak with expert knowledge on systems you've never seen. I've held this office for 30 years. I've seen all sorts of games, and your commanding officers leaving that carrier to subordinates, and your own abuse of your commanding officer's communications privileges is an official report in my chain of command. This is not the frontier. This is not a bear-based militia operation, and if your service ever hopes to turn these trainees into competent military personnel, you can start by setting a personal example. Clean up your own command and stop fomenting dissension in this facility.
I do not accept that assessment.
Then you can leave this office. And if you are called on to testify, you'll be there as one of the pilots personally involved in the accident, not as a systems expert. You'd be very unwise to push past that position, or you'll find questions raised that could be damned embarrassing to your absentee superior and your entire service. I'm talking about adverse publicity if you give grounds to any of these senators or to the high command. Do you understand that? Because I won't pull any punches. And the one security no one can guarantee is a senator's personal staff.
Are you attempting to dictate my testimony, Colonel? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
In no wise. Give my regards to your captain. Good day, Lieutenant.
Something had come loose. Banging. The tumble did that. Decker reached after the cabinet, tried to get to the comm. Hand caught his arm. Something shoved him back, and he hit pillows. Bang from elsewhere.
Hey, Deck, you want eggs or pancakes?
He couldn't figure how Ben had gotten onto the ship. Ben had rescued him, but he didn't remember that.
Eggs or pancakes?
Eggs aren't real, he said. Awful stuff.
Oh, they're real, Deck boy. Not to my taste, living things, but they're real enough to upset my stomach. Eggs, you want? Orange juice?
He tried to move. Usually he couldn't, but his arms were free. He stuffed pillows under his head, and Ben did something that propped the head up. Ben went out in the hall and came back and set a tray down on the table, swung it over him.
Eat it. That's an order, deck boy.
He picked up a fork. It seemed foreign, difficult to balance in .9 G. His head kept going around. His arm weighed more than he remembered, and it was hard to keep his head up. But he stabbed a bit of scrambled egg and got a bite down. Another. He reached for the orange juice, but Ben did it for him, took a sip himself beforehand, and said,
We got better at Saul 1.
maybe it was. Maybe he was supposed to know that. Ben held the cup to his lips, and he sipped a little of it. It stung cuts in his mouth, and it hit his stomach with a sugar impact.
Keep it up, deck boy, and they'll take that tube out.
He didn't know there was a tube. Didn't know how Ben had gotten here, or where they were now. Didn't look like the hole at all. Didn't look like R2 Hospital. He reached after the fork, took another tentative nibble at the eggs. God, he was weak.
Where's Bird? He asked. What year is it, deck boy? I warned you there'd be a test this morning.
He shut his eyes, opened them, and Ben was still there. In this room. He recalled something like that. Ben was going to beat hell out of him if he missed. 2324.
Good boy. Have some more OJ.
Can't. His stomach suddenly felt queasy when he thought about that number. Number had to be wrong. He waved the cup away and watched Ben drink it. Ben in a UDC uniform. He was going crazy. It was 2324. Ben didn't belong here. Ben said,
You remember Meg and Sal?
Yeah, sure.
Meg writes to you, doesn't she?
Yeah, sometimes.
Real love affair.
We're friends.
Yeah, Ben said. You looked it when you said goodbye. Remember saying goodbye?
He took an envelope out of his pocket. Envelope, envelope, envelope. Sorry. He took an envelope out of his pocket. He held up a handful of cards and pictures.
Remember these?
He'd seen them before. They'd lied to him, the doctors had. They made all these things up. They told him they were his. He'd thrown them across the room. Now Ben had them. Ben held up a picture of him with people he didn't remember and he couldn't look at.
What are their names?
He shook his head. Now, here I don't know.
Woman's Ellie?
The name jolted. Ellie was dead. Pete and Falcone.
Pete?
Guy on the right. Big grin. Pete smiled like that. Pete had his arm over the shoulder, but he couldn't remember the photo.
Which one's Pete?
I don't know. But it was a lie. Ben just didn't belong with them. Everything was scrambled. Corey and Ben and Bird. He was afraid Meg was going to be in that picture if he went on looking at it. Blood. Exploding everywhere. Beads floating. Fine mist. He squeezed his eyes shut. The eggs didn't sit well at his stomach. Everyone in that picture was dead. He was in there too.
Who's the other guy?
Falcone.
Said not to worry about him. Didn't he? Left you a note? You remember?
He shook his head. He shoved the table away, tried to get up. Ben pushed him back against the pillows, and a stabbing pain went through his skull. He grayed out for a moment. When he came back, Ben was quietly finishing his toast. Ben said,
You ready to talk now?
The cup hit the grid, sideways. 2 out of 5. Graf lifted the cover up and righted it before the coffee hit, collected his overdue morning caffeine, and turned in the general noise of the end of breakfast, straight into Villy's intercept. UDC Flight Chief, Captain Alexandro Villanueva, senior test pilot for the UDC, who said, all friendly, "Here you and the old man went one this morning." Fast. Must have ricocheted off Tanzer's wall, Graf thought, and shrugged in mid-sip while Villanueva stuck his card in the slot and punched up a coffee. He said, "We differed." Villanueva rescued his cup. "Damn thing." "Ever since they changed the cups." Villanueva took the coffee out and let the cover drop, said quietly, "Back when we were doing the A89, we had one of these runs of trouble. Lost 12 guys in 6 months. The old man just sat in that office and filled out the reports. You never saw him crack, but it broke him up. Same now. He wants to pull this program out, but we've got to come out of this with an answer. A right answer." "Redesign isn't it?" He got on well enough with Villanueva. Villanueva had started out calling him son. Never did think he'd quite gotten the man out of that mindset. Gray hair on Captain Villy. Legitimately come by, rumor had it. Handful of crack-ups and a few pieces of luck. If dealing with Tanzer daily didn't do it. They kept trying to promote him to a desk. God only wish he'd take his... They kept trying to promote him to a desk. God only wish he'd get Tanzer's post and run the whole program, not just test ops. But Villy kept on making test runs himself, one of the UDC pilots who had real respect among the shepherds. "Graf," Villanueva said, "damn it, we're vulnerable on this project. We're real vulnerable. Politicians are gathering like sharks. I know the old man's hard to deal with, but let's not hang the differences out in plain sight today." He thought about Mitch, about the frustration among the shepherds who wanted to fight Tanzer, and that did no good. "They won't likely ask me anything but where I was, where the targets were. That's all in the electronic record. Cut and dried. Isn't that the expression for it?" Villanueva stood there a moment, just looking at him. He expected Villanueva to say something in answer, but instead Villanueva walked... Or is it Villanueva? I'm sorry if I'm mangling this, but we're going with Villanueva because his nickname is Villy. And that's our logic, and we're sticking to it. Villanueva walked off with his coffee and didn't look back. He expected Villanueva to say something in answer, but instead Villanueva walked off with his coffee and didn't look back. There we go. Maybe he should have given more back, used a different expression, read the signals otherwise. He didn't dislike the man. God knew he didn't dislike him. The man had been trying to say something, but somehow in the inevitable screw-ups between Blue Skyer and Spacer, he had the feeling the signals had gotten fuzzed. Villanueva went over to a table with his own men, sat down. Graf walked over to the other side, where a couple of the fleet's own greyheads inclined together. Demas and Saito. Nav 1 and Com 1. No credence at all to the equivalencies that the fleet had settled on them. Commander Demas. Demas? I think the S is silent. Demas! It's Demas! It's D-E-M-A-S. If it was D-I-M-A-S, it'd be Demas, I would think. But D-E might be Dema. Shoot, I don't know. We're going with Dema. I need more water. One sec. I'm interrupting like every other line right now. I'm so sorry. Have I mentioned that CJ Cherry is moderately challenging to read aloud? Moderately to extremely? Yes, she is. This is why I like her so much. She is such a good author. Commander Dema, as it happened. But Nav 1 meant it was Dema did the major share of the course plots, with the backing of 18 techs interfacing with scan and long scan at any given instant, which meant that a prototype carrier on a test run knew so precisely where it was and where everything else was that a lieutenant junior grade at helm couldn't screw up if he worked at it.
except with a wrong word to the UDC R&D chief. Think I just picked a wrong word with Villy. Does cut and dried describe what they're going to ask at the hearings? Com 1 said, her almond eyes half lidded. Probably. Rigged might too. On is the man? Dema said, a lot on. Deep in. Drink your coffee, Helm. Present for you. Dema laid a bolt on the table. Fat one. Damn. What is that? That, Junior JG, is a bolt. It was lying next to the wall in a dark little recess in the carrier's main corridor, where the construction crew just installed the number 18 pressure seal. Thing was good as a bullet lying there. I want to see the count sheet. I want the last crew that worked in there. Damn those fools. Station labor, gravitied brains. What do you ask? Ben said, You remember Graf? Yeah, Decker said. What do you remember? The trip out from the belt. Here. Good boy. Where are we? Sol 2, he said. Ben told him so. He had to believe what Ben told him. Ben was the check he had asked for. Ben was what he had got. Ben was what he got, and he had to believe everything Ben told him. He told himself that this morning. Ben showed him pictures and showed him letters in the reader that he remembered reading. The ones from Meg, the note from Falcone, the morning they pulled him off the demo and put somebody else in. Nothing you can do, Falcone had written. Left the note on the system. Came back like a ghost. After the accident. After, you remember where the Sims are? Which ones? You tell me. He felt tired, wrung out. He lay back in the pillows and said, Couple downside. They're all the procedurals. Tried to think of exact words and remembered Ben was a licensed pilot, too. Op stuff. Stuff you need your reflexes for. It's in the core. Null G stuff. Null G and high G. His eyes wanted to drift shut. His mind went around that place as if it were a pit. He could see the chamber in the Null G core, the Sims like so many eggs on maglev tracks, blurring in motion. Lot of G's when they were working. When's the last time you remember using the Sims in the core? Difficult question for a moment. Then not so hard. Watch before the test. Wilhelmsen and I. Wilhelmsen. He was my backup. Friend of yours? Difficult to say. Chad. Wilhelmsen? He nodded, eyes shut. Son of a bitch, but he was all right. Didn't dislike him. Son of a bitch, but he was all right. Didn't dislike him. We got along. So they subbed him in. You watched the test? He didn't know. Completely numb now. But the monitor on the shelf was showing higher points to the green line. You went into shock. They put you in hospital. Wasn't the way he remembered. Wasn't sure what he did remember, but not that shock was the reason. No, he hadn't seen it. No, he hadn't seen it. They give you drugs in the hospital? He nodded. He was relatively sure of that. Give you a prescription when you left? Dunno. They say they did. Then I guess they did. You guess? Were you still high when you left the hospital? Did you have drugs with you? I don't remember. What time of day was it? Don't remember, Ben. I don't remember. But something was there. God, a flare on the vid. A light the cameras couldn't handle. Plasma. Bright as the sun. Pete and Ellie. Falcone and the ship. You all right? The monitor was beeping. No, let him alone. It's all right. Leave him the hell alone. Orderly was trying to intervene. He opened his eyes and looked toward the door, trying to calm his pulse rate, and Ben leaned over and put his hand on his shoulder. Squeezed hard. You get in that sim by yourself? I don't know. Somebody put you there? I don't know. I honestly don't know, Ben. I just can't remember. Come on, Deck. Think about it. You got into the core. You remember that? You had to get that far. What happened then? He shook his head. He kept seeing dark, flashing lights, green lines, and gold. Heard Corey saying, "Nothing you can do, Deck, nothing you can do." They were back in the hole, in his room behind the bar. Had a drawer full of pills. He put a hand over his eyes, then stared at the ceiling and looked over at Ben again to be sure where he was and when he was. But the black kept trying to come back, and the lines twisted and moved. Driver ship, a K long. Loads of rock going to the well at tremendous V. Corey was dead. Dead a long time. So was Bird. He thought that Bird was dead. Fewer and fewer things were coming loose and drifting. He pressed his hands over his eyes until it made sparks of color in the dark of virtual space. Red. Phosphenes. Was that what they said the lights were? Spinning of a sudden. He grabbed the bed. Ben said, "God, watch it!" Something was beeping. Ben said to someone at the door, "You had a dream, that's all." "Want you there this afternoon," Graf said to his Nav-1 and to Saito. Saito said, "This won't be like our procedures. And answer what's asked. This is Earth. Don't mistake it." Graf took a sip of cooling coffee. "I couldn't. The old man hasn't sent us a hint, except Pollard, and Pollard doesn't know anything. I don't know if that's a signal to raise that issue or not, but I can't guarantee the silence. Unless the captain's leaving me to take the grenade, which I'd do. Little they could do anyway but transfer me back, but he should tell me." "No grenades," Demas said. "No chance of Decker talking?" "Pollard's honestly trying, all I know." "You sure he's the captain's? He could be Tanzer's." Graf remembered something he'd forgotten to say, gave a short laugh. "Pollard's a native belter." "You're serious? Tanzer knows it?" "Knows he's a friend of Decker's. That has him the devil in Tanzer's book. What's more, this belter claims he's a priority 10 tracked for Geneva." Demas' brows went up. Graf said, "Bright. Very bright. Computers. Top security computers." "Tanzer can't snag a priority like that." Saito said, "Not without an authorization. I doubt Tanzer can even access that security level to realize what he is." "The captain set up Pollard with a room in the hospital. I told him to stay to it and Decker's room and keep his head down. With a security clearance like that, he understands what quiet means, I think. He's got an appointment waiting for him, if he can get out of here before he becomes a priority to Tanzer. A priority to Tanzer." "You signal him?" "Every word I could prudently use. There were some I didn't. Maybe I should have. But he's UDC. You don't know where it'll go, ultimately." "No remote chance on Decker?" "No chance on this one. Too much to ask. They've requested the log. They're going to ask questions on the carrier. They'll want to ask questions about the trainees. But they won't talk to them. They're not scheduled. Trainees don't talk to the EC. Trainees they're designing those ships around don't talk to the committee because the committee is only interested in finding a way that doesn't admit we're right. Another skitsy AI. Another budget fight." "The Earth Company makes a lot of money on shipbuilding," Demas said. "Does that thought ever trouble your sleep?" "It's beginning to." The captain wanted to bust Demas up to a captaincy. Demas insisted he was staying with Q. The argument was still going on. The fact that Demas hated administration and claimed he was a tactician, not a strategist, but Demas saw things. Good instincts, the man had. Saito said, quietly, Committee will be predominantly male, predominantly over 50, and they won't understand why the captain didn't leave Fitz in charge and take me and Demas with him. That's what you're dealing with. Fitzroy, Helm 1, was answering questions for the committee at Sol 1. Graf said, glumly, Tanzer's threatening to make an issue out of their command rules. Demas shook his head. Let him make it. That'll get me to the stand surer than the nav stats would. And I don't think he wants that. One could wish. But one couldn't get technical with the legislative types. With the engineers, yes. They'd talk to Demas, but the engineers couldn't talk policy to the legislators, couldn't get through their own management. I keep having this feeling they're going to blindside us. You'll handle it, no question. Easy done. Q's silence was overall the most troublesome thing. Graf finished off his coffee, took the bolt, and pocketed it. Paperweight. Every paper pusher should have one. Tell the construction boss I want to talk to him in my office right now. Ought to give him the thing at max V, Demas said. When we find the foreman who faked the parts count, I'd be willing. Graf headed for the door, tossed his cup in the collection bin. Ben was back. Ben had been in the hall a while. Ben sat down with his chair close to the bed, put his hand on his shoulder. How you doing, Deck? All right. You were remembering, you know that? Pete and Ellie? You remember that? Ben scared him. I was dreaming. Sorry, Ben. If he was dreaming, he could be in the belt. Or the ship. But Ben shook at his shoulder and said, Deck, how did you get in the sim? What were you doing in there? I got to get out of here. I got 12 hours, Deck. Sim chamber. Pods spinning around and around. Racket. Echoes. Everything tried to echo. And Ben said he had 12 hours. He didn't want Ben to leave. Ben came and Ben went, but as long as he knew there was a chance of Ben being there, he knew what he was he knew what he was waking up to. He said, It's June 20th, isn't it? Isn't it, Ben? Ben took a fistful of hospital gown under his chin and said, Decker, remember what fucking happened. I got to be on that shuttle. It's my life at stake, you copy? He tried. Ben let him go, smoothed the covers, patted his shoulder. Didn't ask him anything for a moment. Ben was upset, and he earnestly tried to pull the sim chamber out of the dark for Ben. But it wasn't there. Just that fireball. Second sun. They said it wasn't Wilhelmsen's fault. Maybe it wasn't. You died when you overran your limits. Target, he said. Ben said, What? He said, Target. Missed one. And with that, we are going to call it a day. Alrighty, folks. I hope people are digging it. I realize a lot of that went hard, hot, and fast, and a bunch of this book is going to be that way. I will try to make sure that I am slowing down a bit during some of the more exciting bits. I probably didn't do a great job on the conversations between Tanzer and Graft, partly because I can't come up with a consistent voice for Graf, and because Graf is going to be featuring pretty prominently. I'm probably going to make his voice something a bit easier to do than like a half Nordic thing that I was going to go for. It's not worth the effort. All right, so thanks again for tuning in. If you're watching it live, thanks, Optical Antenna. I do this every week starting at about noon Eastern Standard Time. Free Read Fridays, where I read short stories and indeed entire novels aloud. I like to pretend I don't play favorites, but it is absolutely my favorite stream. Right now, you've listened to the first, what is that, like a sixth of the book, maybe? Could be a fifth. Sixth-ish of the book. So expect, I don't know, probably 8 streams total, depending on how my scheduling works out. I might have to make them shorter.
I do other streams throughout the week. Blah 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 blah. I have a Mecha Monday stream where I do something giant robot related or mecha adjacent. We're doing some giant robot stuff, and then Warframe Wednesdays where I do some Warframe. I will be updating probably this weekend. I'll be updating the playlists on the YouTube channel so that they are up to date. So all of Quarantine will be in its proper place, and then everything will be in its logical location, including this episode. Alrighty, with that, I gotta run. Thanks again. If you're watching this after the fact, you can watch me do them live. They are all done live. As I said again, starting at about noon Eastern Standard Time, which I realize is not people's normal time. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Alrighty, thanks again. Have a good one. Stay safe, stay sane, and be decent to each other. And don't let your life get shanghaied by powers beyond your comprehension. Well, okay, that's a joke. We all know that's not how it works. Alrighty, have a good one. See you all later.